Okay. I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to look at points A, B, C, D, X, and the type of curve. And I'm going to ask you in a minute what you can tell me about these points and the curve. So take a minute to think about it, and then I'll ask you to, type it in on the chat.
All good.
All right, I'm going to start with A. What could you tell me about point A? Just type it in the chat. How would you describe point A? See, does anyone remember? I think we went over this last week. All right, inefficiency. Okay, all right, inefficient, nothing's all right. And you're right, A is inefficient. It could be, we're in a recession. It could be high unemployment. It's inefficient use of the resources. That being said, B, D, and C represent what? B, D, and C. Okay. Peter has efficient production, productive efficiency. Yes, it's productively efficient, meaning we're using all our resources to full capacity at B, D, and C. Is one more efficient than the other? No, they're all using all the resources efficiently. All right, what do we have for letter X? I wouldn't say future efficiency, Alex. Okay. Not possible, unattainable. I would just add for both those answers, unattainable and not possible with present day resources. So it's unattainable and not possible with present day resources. So to get there, you'd have to have a change in technology, a change in quantity or quality of resources, a change in capital stock, or a change in human resources. Now, this curve is bowed out. By being bowed out, what does that say to us? What do we know then? Okay, resources aren't easily adaptable. That is totally correct. What else could you say if the curve is bowed out? If resources are not easily adaptable, what else happens? Anyone? If resources are not easily adaptable and it's bowed out, okay, opportunity cost increases. Good job. Good job, Timothy. Opportunity costs increase. So when you see a bowed out curve, resources aren't easily adaptable and opportunity cost increases. All right. And you guys got A, B, you nailed that. All right. Now, when you see a line, a straight line with like A, B, C, D in it, What can you tell me about this production possibilities curve? Resources are easily adaptable. And because resources are easily adaptable, like Alexander says, what else do we know? Constant opportunity cost. Okay, good job. Just a quick review of the production possibilities curve. And while I'm talking about it, we will start the year with micro. This is both on the micro and the macro test. So even though I don't think, I think we'll get to know this really well, it serves you doubly as well because it's on both tests. Okay. All right, if you're following on the outline, here's where we start to get some new stuff. And it's in the chapters you have to read for the summer, but positive versus normative statements. Positive is based on facts. So a positive statement could be there's 1,300 students at Calvert Hall. Unemployment is 3.5%. Gas is $3.49 a gallon. Those are positive statements. They're facts. It's hard for economists to argue about those. The normative statement is more like a value judgment. So like Calvert Hall has 1,300 students. Why? Because we offer a diverse curriculum. Or why? Because Baltimore County schools are a mess. Or all of those are normative statements. They're not a fact. They're just judgments and values that we think is correct. Unemployment is low. Why? President Biden's economic policy. That would be a value judgment. It's not a fact that his economic policy is why unemployment is low. You could argue either way on it. So positive versus normative statements sometimes get confused. So I wanted to go over that quickly. Now, when you get into trade, there are two things, and I might have touched on this last week or not. Countries trade for a couple of reasons. One, and usually important, to specialize in what they can make at the lowest cost to trade with other countries at things they can't make at that lower cost or things they do not have. All right. So when you're looking at trade, comparative advantage drives trade, but they also talk about absolute advantage. And absolute advantage is the producer that can either produce the most output, the most corn, the most wheat, the most cars, the most computers, or requires the least amount of input. So an input would be how many hours it takes to make a car, how many acres it takes to grow corn or wheat. All right. So inputs are things like the time or the manpower to make things. Output is how much of those things. So you want the greatest output for absolute advantage and the lowest input. Now, absolute advantage, both countries, and we're only going to look at two countries at a time, can have the absolute advantage. Comparative advantage is what drives trade. It's the producer with the lowest opportunity cost. My opportunity cost is low, say for computers. I'm going to make computers and then trade them with a country that might have a high opportunity cost in computers. And I'll show you how to figure out the opportunity cost in a second. All right. The country should trade if they have a relatively lower opportunity cost. Specialize in the good that's cheaper, meaning the good that has the lowest opportunity cost for them to produce. Okay. Now, There's your two countries, Kenya and India. And there is how many pineapples and how many radios they can make. So whenever they're asking you how much of the product, how many pineapples, how many radios, it's an output. In any output question, the formula is, oh, I hope you guys could hear that, which is output equals other over. Woo! Output equals other over. What do I mean? Let's see who has the lowest opportunity cost in pineapples. All right, now question we identify. The other is radios. So I'm going to take the 10 radios, put it over. Now, hopefully we're going to get this right. So I'm going to put 10 over 30, Kenya, right? Output equals other over. Right? Now for India, output, the other is radios, 40 over. Well, 40 over 40 is 1. 10 over 30 is a third. Kenya has a comparative advantage for pineapples. Now, I said before, if you have the comparative advantage for one thing, you cannot have the comparative advantage for both. So we would know that India has to have the comparative advantage for radios. However, just for practice, let's do it. All right. So if we're doing comparative opportunity cost for radios, we look at the other, which is pineapples, 30, and we put it over the 10. 30 over 10, we know is 3. Then India, the other pineapples is 40 over 40 is 1. Okay. 1 is lower than 3. You're always looking for the lowest opportunity cost. So therefore, India has the comparative advantage in radios, and Kenya has the comparative advantage in pineapples. Again, notice you cannot have the comparative advantage in both. Okay? Now, how about absolute advantage? Absolute advantage, since it's the output problem, is who could make the most. India can make 40 pineapples to 30 for Kenya. They have the absolute advantage in pineapples. They can make 40 radios to 10. India has the absolute advantage in both. Okay, but not the comparative advantage. All right, does anyone have any questions? You can either type it in or you can turn on your mic and ask. Okay, I'm going to erase this then. Okay, and here was the other over, 10 over 30, so it'd be a third, 1, and we said Kenya has the lower opportunity cost, and this is just what we did there. Okay? Okay, now, how about an input question? Notice I put IOU. Input equals other under. Now you're still going to go for the lowest opportunity cost. So let's do this one together. All right. How do I know it's an input? The number of hours it takes. Notice bread, 1 loaf of bread, 1 bushel of corn We're not measuring how much corn. We're saying 1 bushel. What's changing is the number of hours it takes to make it, which makes it an input. All right. So input is other under. So which nation has the absolute advantage in producing bread? Now, in this example, if it's an input question, I want the smallest number. So I'm going to pick, for bread, they're a tie, so no one has it. For corn, it's going to be the United States, because I'd rather produce a bushel of corn in 2 hours than 6. All right. Does that have anything to do with trade? No. Oh, no. That's just absolute advantage. Now, question 3, which has the comparative advantage in producing bread? Right. I'm going to do the United States. What's the other product? Corn. I'm going to put it under. So it's 4/2. For France, what's the other corn? I'm going to put it under. Right. 4/6 is smaller than 4/2. France has bread. Now, I know in comparative advantage, you can only have one. So France can have corn. The United States has to have corn. But again, for practice, let's do it. The other is bread, now that I'm looking at corn, and that's 2/4. I'm looking corn for France. The other is bread. That's under 6/4. Okay. Corn it is. Okay. All right. So that's an input or output. All right. Here's what I'm going to want you to do. I'm going to want you to first identify if the problem is an input or an output. Second, identify who had the absolute advantage. And third, who had comparative advantage. Okay? And these are the 4 scenarios. Now, let me just help you set up the chart for the first scenario. And then I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to do these on their own. So Sarah and Megan are going to be like this, Sarah and Megan, all right? Perms and haircuts. Sarah gives 2 haircuts or 1 perm, 1 perm, 2 haircuts. Megan gives 3 haircuts, 2 perms, 3 haircuts. So there it is, all right? So what you want to do after you set up your chart, is it an input or an output? Absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and then who should specialize? All right. I'll give you like 3 or 4 minutes to do a minute or so to do each one, and then I'll come back and we'll go over them. All right. Now, obviously, guys, I'm not in your house, and I don't know, are you actually doing these questions? The more you practice with them, the better you're going to be with them. And usually, if you do these first 4 classes right, the first unit, the guys who come to this, they crush the first unit. All right. And that gets you off to a really good start. So again, I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll be back to you. Okay, I'm gonna come back here. Let's just go over these and see how we're doing. All right. Before we flip to the chart, Sarah. Sarah gives 2 haircuts of 1 perm an hour. Megan gives 3 haircuts of 2 perms. Type in the chat, input or output, input or output. Okay, I'm getting output, I'm getting only output, and output it is, because it's the number of hair or perms. All right, now there's my chart, Sarah and Megan. So just type in M or S, who has the absolute advantage in perms? Okay, you guys are on top of it. Who has the absolute advantage in haircuts? Okay, I'm seeing a couple of Sarahs. Megan has the absolute advantage in haircuts 3-2, because in an output, you're looking for who could do the most haircuts. Remember, for absolute advantage, a country could have both. Okay. Now, who has the comparative advantage for perms? Who has the comparative advantage for perms? I'm getting Megan. I got a Sarah. I'm getting another Megan. All right. Let's do it. Just to make sure. All right. So for perms, it's the other. So for Sarah, it's the other 2/1. Output is other over. All right. And then for Megan, the other is 3/2. 3 2s is 1.5, smaller than 2. Therefore, Megan has the comparative advantage for perms. Again, we know you can only have the comparative advantage for 1, but let's just do for practice. Sarah, if we're doing haircuts, the other is perms. That's 1/2. And then 2/3. So we know a half is smaller than 2/3. All right. Who should specialize in haircuts, Sarah or Megan? Who should specialize in haircuts, Sarah or Megan? Okay, Sarah, because she has the lowest opportunity cost. All right. Before I go to the next one, any questions? Because there are a couple of people who might have the wrong answer. I just want to make sure they're clear. All right, I want to go back first. All right, Justin picks a 16 flats or 8 breaks. Tim, 14 flats. Output or input question? Output or input? What do we got? Okay, I've got output. Seems like everyone agrees. And again, it's number of flats or breaks. Now let's go to their chart. Who has the absolute advantage for flats? Absolute advantage for flats. We're going with Justin. Okay. When it's 8-8 like this, I would say no one has the absolute advantage. Okay. Nobody has the absolute advantage. All right. Now, I'm looking at breaks. Who has the comparative advantage for breaks? Who has the comparative advantage for breaks? Got a couple of Tims. We're going with Tim. Okay. We look like we've got it. Let's just check. Right, again, I'm looking at Justin, other is flat, 16/8, which would be 2. For Tim, the other is flat, 14/8, like 1 3/4. I know there. All right. All right, good job. I know if Tim has a comparative advantage for breaks, Justin has to have it for flats. Anything else before we move on? All right. All right, let's backtrack to the problem. Let's look at number 3. Hannah takes 30 minutes to wash dishes and 1 hour to vacuum the house. Kevin takes 15 minutes to wash dishes. Input or output question? Input or output question? Okay, good job. Good job if you recognize input there. All right, now, who has the absolute advantage in washing dishes? Who has the absolute advantage in washing dishes? Okay, I'm seeing Kevin's. Excellent. All right, because he could wash them in 15 minutes. When we're doing input, we're looking for the smallest number for absolute advantage. All right, who has the absolute advantage for vacuuming? Kevin again. All right, 45 is smaller than 60. Now, remember, you can have the absolute advantage in both. All right. Now, in dishes, who has the comparative advantage? In dishes, who has the comparative advantage? I got one Hannah, a couple of Kevins. All right, let's look. In input, formula is IOU, right? Input equals they're under. So looking for the comparative advantage in dishes, the other is vacuums. So it's going to be 30/60. Okay. Here, the other is going to be vacuums. It's going to be 15/45. So that's 1/2 compared to 1/3. I know a third is smaller, right? So Kevin has a comparative advantage here. Now, Hannah should have it because we always say you can't have the comparative advantage in both. Let's look at it again just for practice. All right. Input is other under, so that's going to be 60. And then I'm going to put 30 under, other under. And then again, vacuums is 45. Kevin, what's the other product? It's the dishes, 15, 45. So it's going to be 3/2. So Hannah's going to have it there. All right. Any questions on these comparative advantage problems? It seems that you guys have done a really good job. Anyone has a question on their mic or and about anything? It could be how to figure out it's an input or an output. It could be any question on these. Or you could chat it in. All right. All right, we did good, so I'm just going to skip Americas. And now we're going to go to demand defined. All right, if I was going to tell you the foundation for economics is supply and demand. All right, so we're going to like introduce supply and demand today. We're going to talk more about it next week. And like that will be really the foundation. Okay. Now, the greatest part of the summer. Yeah, Mike, sorry, I just saw your question. Comparative advantage is who has the lowest opportunity cost, and that would be the lowest ratio. Does that answer your question? Yeah, and Mike, since you asked that, it triggered, it doesn't matter if it's an input or an output, you're always looking for the lowest opportunity cost when you're doing trade. Okay? Thank you for asking. I don't think I clarified that really well. All right. Okay. The rest of it'll be videoed and I'll send it out probably tonight. Okay. Thank you for telling me. All right. Demand defined. What is demand? Now, I think kids and students understand demand better because that's what we do as consumers. Demand is different quantity of goods that consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. The different quantity of goods consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. So you go into the store and you buy orange juice, or people buy cars, or you buy clothes. All of that is kind of demand. All right. Now, I use the example, Bill Gates is able to purchase a Ferrari, but if he isn't willing to, there's no demand. Okay, so you got to be willing and able. Where on the reverse, I could want a Ferrari, but I'm not able to purchase it. Probably not in charge of the magazine drive. Maybe I could purchase it. All right, what is the law of demand? The law of demand is there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Now, we got to get really and we'll clean up this language either later today or next week. It's quantity demanded, okay? So the law of demand states there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. What does that mean? It means when price goes up, so say at $5, people were buying 10 bushels of corn. At $7, they'll buy 6 bushels of corn. All right. Like as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down, or vice versa. And here is price and quantity. Look at these guys, smile. As price falls, quantity demanded rises. As price rises, quantity demanded falls. Now, why? Why does this occur? If we were in class, it would probably be a lot easier for you to, but let's go. Someone chat in. Why do you think that happens? Why, when price goes up, say of Pepsi, quantity demanded of Pepsi goes down? Why do you think that would happen? Okay, Peter, not as affordable for everyone. Yes, I'm going to use a little different wording, but that's, Luke, you're right. People aren't willing to buy for a higher price, but what? They're going to just stop drinking? Having so much money, Mike, yeah, that goes a little with Peter. It's not worth the price. All right, cool. You guys all, when I put all your answers, you've got the 3 major reasons. I'm going to word it a little differently. Other competitors, Charlie, yes. All right, you guys nailed it all together. 3 reasons. 1, the substitution effect, and that is like people saying, oh, the competition. All right, if the price of Pepsi is high, people are going to stop buying Pepsi and buy Coke, or some other drink product. Second is the income effect, which a couple of you mentioned, meaning like if the price of Coke goes up, or the price of Pepsi. So say like Pepsi costs $1 a bottle and I have $10, I could buy 10. If it goes to $2, I can only buy 5. So quantity demanded went down because I just don't have enough money to buy 10 anymore. And the third is marginal utility, which is kind of like someone who said it's not worth the price. Like Cole said, it's not worth the price. Meaning, if you remember from last week, you're not going to marginal cost. If marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit, you're going to stop buying it. So if the price of Pepsi like goes up to $2 a bottle, it's not worth the price because the benefit isn't $2 a bottle. So people are going to stop buying it. So I'm going to go into these a little more in detail here. Substitution effect, Pepsi and Coke. If the price goes up for a product, consumers buy less of that product. They're going to buy less, say, Coke, if the price of Coke went up, and they're going to buy more Pepsi, and vice versa. All right. If the price of Coke goes down, people are going to buy more Coke, less Pepsi. All right. So that's one reason the law of demand occurs. Second is the income. Now, the income effect really doesn't have to do with income. It's not, am I making more or less money? It's how much purchasing power my money, does it increase or decrease? So again, if I have $10, all right, if the price goes down, I can buy more with that $10 than I used to, all right? Like with that, if Pepsi was $1 a can and I could buy 10, if the price goes to 50, I could buy 20. So quantity demanded for Pepsi will go up. Obviously, the reverse goes true. Like I said before, if the price goes to $2 a can, instead of buying 10 cans, I buy 5. Okay. Third is the law of diminishing marginal utility. All right. Remember, marginal, additional, utility, satisfaction. And this goes more to what Paul said. And the law of the states that as you consume more units of any good, the satisfaction is going to go down. And therefore, when the price goes up, it's just not worth it. All right. Now, like right now, I'm really thirsty from talking. So maybe I feel like a Coke's worth $2. But after the second or third Coke, the price diminishes, right? I'm not as thirsty. I'm not going to pay as much because the benefit is not as good. All right, so you've got substitution effect, income effect. Remember, it's not income, it's purchasing power, and the law of diminishing marginal utility. Those are your three. And that's the law of demand. All right. All right, let me show you what a demand curve looks like here. All right, so here's, if you were putting this graph on in your notes, you would, and you don't have to put the dollars and the quantity. You would have the X and Y axis. You could have P, you don't have to have prices here, you just need P for price, and on the bottom, you need Q, all right? You don't need really quantity of, you know, where I have Q here, that's all you need. You don't need really quantity of cereal. All right. Now demand, D for downward slope. And that makes sense, right? The law of demand as price, right? As price goes down from 5 to 4, quantity demanded goes from 10 to 20, and there it is. All right. So that is downward slope. Now, remember we talked about shift to the production possibilities curve. There's things that shift the demand curve. All right. All right. And let me, when they say shift in demand or change in demand, they mean the whole curve shifts. And that means at the same price, more people are willing and able to purchase that good. Okay, this is a change in demand. So if they say change in quantity demanded, the curve doesn't shift. Remember earlier I said the vocabulary is going to be tricky. It is. A change in demand means the whole curve shifts. A change in price does not shift the curve. And let's see. All right. A change in price, say you're at $5, you would have been selling 10 boxes of cereal. At $4, you're selling 20. But the curve doesn't shift. Quantity demand shifts. Okay. So what if cereal made you smarter? What do you think would happen, cereal? Would the demand increase, decrease, or stay the same? Okay. Demand goes up. I mean, parents would be buying cereal like crazy. All right, if demand goes up, notice at every price, people are demanding more, right? Where when the price went from 5 to 4, only at $4 was quantity demanded different. But here at every price. So to show that, I'm going to put the arrow and then have a demand curve. When you see this, a change in demand, it's increase in demand, it's a shift in demand. When the whole curve moves, change in demand, increase in demand, shift in demand. Okay. I would label the first demand curve probably D1, the second one D2. I put an arrow, and there we go. All right, I think I have another. Again, that's an increase in demand. Prices didn't change, but people want more cereal. All right, that's important. There was no change in the price. At every price level, at $5, people wanted more, at 4, at 3, at 2, at 1. Okay. What if cereal caused baldness? Add in what would happen. Okay. Decrease in demand. Right? And we're going to show that by putting the arrow and a left. And again, change in demand, shift in demand, decrease in demand. Again, prices didn't change. People just want less cereal at every price. Okay. All right. I got a couple of questions in the chat. Okay. Demand goes down. They were just, all right. Now, tricky one. What if the price of milk goes up? How would that affect cereal? Price of milk goes up. And demand goes down from Luke. Anyone else? Demand goes down. Luke, do you want to flip on your mic and tell us why demand goes down? Or why you think that?
I think it goes down because if the price of milk goes up, people wouldn't buy as much milk, and then people wouldn't eat as much cereal unless you're a psycho and you eat it without milk. But
Okay, all right, excellently explained. Milk and cereal are like complements. Like Luke said, if the price of milk goes up, quantity demanded for milk is going to go down. People are going to buy less milk, therefore, you're going to consume less cereal. That was really well done and explained. That would have shifted it left. The last thing today, what are the shifters in demand? There are 5. I think of it as timer as the acronym, all right? T, taste and preference. What is an example of taste and preference? Baldness, smartness, things that might get you to buy it. Second, income. If people are making more money, they're going to buy more. If people are making less money, they're going to buy less. Market size. Think of Under Armour at one time, like they were a little company in Maryland, and then they grew regionally, and then nationally, then internationally. And as you grow and your market size increases, the demand for your product increases. 4, expectations, usually the hardest. And by the way, we will practice next week on every one of these. So don't worry about oh, I don't understand. We will clear this up and do more next week. Expectations. If the price of cars go up next month, what's going to happen to the demand of cars today? People are going to buy them, right? Because they know the price is going to go up in the future, so I might as well buy them now. That's expectations. And then related goods, we did with the milk. That's substitutes and complements. All right, so taste and preference, income, market size, expectation, related good. These are the only things that shift that curve. Nothing else shifts the curve. So when we're doing problems and you're going to say, Mr. Breslow, shift it left, right. Okay, then you got to tell me which one of these 5. Notice change in price is not on this. And when I say change in price, I mean of the product. So if we're talking about the cereal market, the change of price of milk shifts the curve because it's a complement, but the change in the price of cereal would not shift the curve. It would slide up and down the curve. All right. We went a little longer than I usually want to go. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask before we call it a day? Remember, this will be put on, I'll put it on YouTube channel. So if there was something not clear that you want to hear again, you can.